Okay, welcome everybody. See, we've got a few attendees. Hi, Christina, and hi, Sherry. Thank you so much for joining us. And welcome to another Block Editor Basics webinar. This one is going to be a bit of a continuation of our previous webinar, which was about custom text layouts and managing other text blocks and things like that. We're going to continue with a few things that I didn't quite get into as much detail as I wanted in the last one. And then we're going to delve into some grids and groups and spans and rows and stacks and how you can basically use those to further all these crazy text layout things we've been doing. So as we've been doing, if you guys want to go ahead and let us know which paper you're with and how comfortable you are. I've got some familiar faces. So if you just want to pipe in and say hi, make sure we got you guys in the chat. If you have any questions going along, please feel free. And then basically, just to kind of get into a couple more details, I wanted to start back with lists again, because I got into some ordered lists and things, but I didn't have as much time as I wanted to kind of go into some of the nested lists and some of the little quirky bits that you can run into there. And also how lists and details, the list block and the details block can kind of relate a little bit. And then maybe some places where the details block could help you with some interesting places. Then we're going to move back. We've touched on the cover block in a bunch of different contexts with images and things like that, but it can be very useful as kind of a layout block as well as just a content block. And then speaking of layout blocks, we're probably going to spend a good portion of the last part of the webinar looking at the group block, which basically can be converted into a grid, row, or stack block. We'll touch a little bit on the columns block, but for most of what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to show kind of how you can accomplish most column things with just using the grids, rows, and stacks. Those are kind of like a little more flexible, and I like those. Okay, so let's begin our first topic. We're going to talk about nested lists. And this is basically, if you've ever seen this, where you have an outline and you've got, your first level and then your next level of indent kind of gives you a subtopic. And then you can have a next level of indent that gives you detailed items on that subtopic. So in this case, I've got a 3-level list. And I will actually jump over to the site here so you can see this in all its block editor glory. And by the way, it is Friday the 13th, so I thought I'd use this as a theme to kind of give us a little fun content to work with as we're laying this out. So the topic of this sample post is all about number-related phobias. Just in case you're wondering, like, why is that in there? So we've got your fear of Friday the 13th, and then you've got the fear of the number itself plus the fear of the day. So obviously these have different levels of meaning, and so we're using a nested list to make this work. So first off, I'll click in the top level up here, and I've got the outline open as usual. So let's click on the top level. So this is the top of the list, and this is where you have basically your high level list type, where you can basically change this from a numbered to a non-numbered list. And I want you to notice that when I do this, none of the nested lists are changing. This is just the top level list. And the reason for that is this is the top level list, but once you indent a list into a top level list, it has to become its own list. And as such, it now has its own controls for what type of list it wants to be. So at the top level, we've got just a bulleted list, but this nested sublist could instead be the numbered one. And then the same thing goes for the next level. By default, these just have kind of the progression from the dots to the open dots to the squares that you've seen quite often in normal document editors, where those are just kind of the default nesting. But I did want to point out that one of the interesting quirks about this is the fact that when you nest a list inside of another list to create these indentations, it also gives you these individual controls over that list block. So you see, we've got the top list block, the next one down, that's the one I just changed over to the numbers. And then we have yet another list down, which is the list container for these the second level in. And once again, you can change those over to something else. Even I pointed this out last time, but your list styles are over here. where you can change these to maybe lowercase letters or something like that. So you've got kind of you can see how the different list levels are operating. You got a bullet list up here, then you've got a nested numbered list, and then within that you've got also a nested ordered list that's using letters. So that's kind of an overview, but I did just want to point out a couple of things on how these work. So let's see if this will let me do this. Yes, it will. One of the transformations that's quite common is to move between a list and just a whole string of paragraphs. So why don't we do that real quick? I'm going to transfer this whole thing back to paragraphs. It's going to flatten it all out. Okay, so now we're all the way back here. Now what I want to do is I want to start building the list back and show you kind of how these indentations work. So I just need to make sure I get all of the paragraphs that need to be in the list. There we go. So those are all those. And right now everything's flat. So we're just going to convert this with the click on the paragraph icon for the transformation. And this is going to basically put everything into a top level list. It's going to give us all of the ones here. Now, if we remember, the fear of the number 13 all the way down to fear of Friday was another level in because it's separate from the second phobia down there. So when we have this selected up here in the floating toolbar, this is where your indentation controls are. So I'm just going to indent that next level. Okay. And then we also remember that we had a third, so that you can see as soon as I did that, it created a list container with the list items in it when I did the indent. If I select this again and hit back on the indent, you can see it just goes back to the top level. The issue is I need to go and select all those paragraphs again that need to be indented. So you want to be careful about which ones you're selecting before you change that, because basically it's going to wrap these list items in a new list block for that nested level. So that will take care of that. And then the third was these last ones here. No, the Fear Friday wasn't part of that list. It was just these guys in here. So same deal. I'm going to select those list items, knock them over. And that's basically how you get from just the big string of paragraphs, push things in, create a top level list, and then you select just the paragraphs or the list items within that then need to be inset and grouped in to create the next level of the list. So hope that makes sense on kind of how you can get in and out of these. But as always, these are at the heart of it, these are just like paragraph blocks that you've converted into this container and then assign them nesting roles and stuff like that. So you can't really break anything here, but if you are selecting something like, you just want to make sure if you're trying to change a inset level for a whole group, you want to select the whole list block, or else you might end up selecting one of these in the middle and popping it out, and you might end up with something that you might not be looking for level wise. But as you see, you click on an individual list item, it can pop in, and now you see what happened. Because I'd made the Norse mythology a container, when I tried to put it back in, now it's pushed these over. So this is the thing I wanted to point out, where you can get into a little bit of trouble if you're not paying attention on selecting everything that you want to nest or not. Okay, so that's kind of just a recap on the lists. And then that also got me thinking, instead of using this third level list, why don't we try something else? So I've got the first level and the second level list, and then I broke the list. So you see, this is one list with all of the things that are inside it, and then I have this other object. These are the details that I wanted to go back through. So these are using details blocks. And then there's another list that starts up down here, and then yet another list. So one of the things that I'm going to kind of point out here is a list in and of itself can only contain list items. It's a very specific type of container. That's how it manages all of the different levels, the reordering. There's, you can even, like on some of these ordered lists, you can reverse the order and things like that. And so those kind of things need to be contiguous, so you can't just insert stuff into the middle of a list without it breaking. But I tried. So what I did here is I started with the list, and then I just broke out that inside level, this third level here, broke that out. And instead of a list for each one, I created a details for each one. And basically, these are kind of acting as a little list. So each of these has the heading, and then hidden beneath it is basically the paragraph that did the description. So it kind of cleans up the layout a little bit, and you can basically and also you can even nest details inside one another if you want to get really crazy, but it can get a little hectic if you start doing that. Here we go. But it is possible to let's which one are we selecting here? That's the biblical lore one. And if we actually do drag the details, let's see if it'll let me do it. Yeah, let's drag it above the hidden paragraph. I'm going to move it below the hidden paragraph. Okay, this is all still in details. So if we click away, you see biblical lore now contains this and the numerological incompleteness. So that could be an interesting way. It doesn't indent them like a list does, but it does at least allow you to kind of hide related things if you want, and then have them spin out as they come out. Okay, list we've been testing these with some like facts and things like that, and they can be quite interesting. I'm gonna go and actually show you what this looks like. So I'm going to undo some of this mayhem I started putting together here and make sure these are back. Yeah. And let's just take a quick look and see what the preview looks like of these outside of the editor. Sources for medical articles. Could you elaborate on that question, please?
Sure. So let's say you have a health article and you want to cite like a medical journal and who the author was for the reference in your article. You can
Yep.
hide it at the bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good thing is you can basically just have a details block that says citations at the bottom, and then you just click on that, and all of the details would be all the different citations that you would be using. So I will address that momentarily. I'll get back to that. So here's basically what the normal nested list looks like. And then here is what my kind of put together version here that has the details in here. And it does work. It's a little layout can be a little funky sometimes with some of the left to right stuff, but we could always address that. But by default, you can see what it's doing. It allows you to kind of create a little sub list using the details and then furthering on with the rest of the list, and you can still maintain this. And I'll show you how I got this to slide over when we get more into some of the container things. And what we were, and you could imagine this could be, let's just come down here, and if you had another details block, and this could be citations, you can basically put a whole series of these, say book one, book two, article, all that kind of stuff, and you would have those all in there. Or what could be even more fun, we notice these are paragraphs. So why don't we select these two paragraphs and we can make them a list. So now you have a citation with a list in it. And then now all of the list stuff we were just talking about, all the nested things, all of the fun things you can do, at least with, just using the straight up list contiguously. But all of these kind of things in the list, parameters, layouts, all that kind of stuff can be hidden within a citation. So you could get pretty extravagant with that. To be honest, you can even, we may get into this a little bit more, but you can actually within the details block, it's just a kind of a special kind of container block that does this hiding thing. You can put quite a bit of content in there. You can put groups, you can put covers. I think last time we did a little demo where you put a little quotation from Einstein with a picture and some graphics and stuff. So you can put all kinds of things in the details. One of the things that's just is important to note is that when you open it up, it pushes content down. So sometimes you have to be aware of how it's interacting with the content around it. But yeah, those are definitely a couple of cool uses of the details block. Okay, and that was kind of just drawing the parallel between those two. Okay, now the fun part. Instead of just looking at text, I kind of wanted to look at all of the blocks and all of the things that you'll find in there that basically allow you to take the text blocks, the image blocks, blocks of blocks, list blocks, all these kind of things, and then use these containers to basically manipulate the way they appear and they display on the page. Basically, this is a grid-based system, and I wanted to go into some details on how you can play around and take advantage of that grid-based system to get some kind of interesting layouts. So basically, let's go to the bottom. Before I show you all the cool stuff, I'll just start from scratch on this. So we've talked about the gallery block before. This doesn't create a gallery. It just allows you to select a group of images from your media library and it drops them into this gallery block that holds on to things. So here's the graduation photos I uploaded for the demo, and it'll say, yeah, you can add captions here and everything. I'm not going to worry about any of that. I just want to get this is just a nice way of bulk dropping all the images into the block editor at one time. Okay. I'm going to add a spacer above this so we don't get confused. There we go. I'll just push this down a little bit. So we're down here. Okay. And so here's our gallery. Now the gallery kind of works like a grid, so you've got columns and things like that. But the problem with the gallery is you can only put images in it. You can't put, like, let's say I wanted to put a spacer somewhere. It'll just kick it out. So that's the reason I wanted to talk about grid. So if I take this, I can convert this into a group. Now, why would I want to convert it to a group? Well, if you come over here and take a look at the settings panel, a group just gathers blocks in a container, and then it immediately gives you these four options. So let me twirl this down. So it kind of just put the gallery in the group, but I don't want these images in a gallery anymore. I just want them in the group. So I'm going to select all the images and just drag them up out of the gallery, keep them in the group. And now you see what happens. These are all just a big vertical stack of images. Okay, let me delete this one. I was just using the gallery block as a quick way to import things. So this is a group, and so now we can see a group will just kind of, put everything in line, just flows down the page. A row will squeeze everything into a row, and then you can, right here, you can allow it to wrap to multiple lines. So if you do that, depending on how big things are, that wrapping will look a lot like everything else because it's just wrapping for each item. So a row is not necessarily useful for what we're using here. A stack is exactly the same. It's just creating a vertical stack of everything. So what we want to do is go all the way to grid. Okay. And as you see with the grid, by default, it just has this minimum column width set up. And it's basically depending on how much space there is, it will add or subtract columns. Like if you have widescreen, if I hid some portions of the screen and this had more space, the preview would grow. So in this case, I'm going to change this to manual. Let's just do 3 columns. And immediately I'm looking, oh, this is down at the bottom. This is actually my hero image. So you can either move it with the arrows here, or you can drag it up to the top. So this is my hero image. Doesn't look like much of a hero image. So this is where I want to introduce spans. So once you drag a block into a grid, you come over here to the Styles tab, and there's this guy right here. This is super important. This is going to be the engine that drives all our fun. So we know we set 3 columns. We didn't set the number of rows. The number of rows are just set by how many items are in the grid. But let's just go for it. What do we want this hero image to do? We want it to go all the way across and sit on top and let the smaller images then flow beneath. So all we need to do is come into the column span, click once, click twice, and now it's going all the way across the 3 columns, and then basically the next items just flow into the grid on the next row. I will say if you come back up to the grid and you change the number of columns, look what happens. See, now you end up with 4, and remember, we only set it to span 3, so now this picture is back up in here because we're allowing another column in. That's why when you're doing these, I like to use the manual setting instead of auto, because if you want to keep the layout consistent, it works better this way. Okay? And then we've got another fun little thing here. Most of these pictures over here look about the same size. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and just make these, let's do a 4x3 because they're pretty close to that. And what that's going to do is standardize the ones that are close. Do this. Okay. And now you notice we've got this tall one. This is kind of a bit of an outlier. So this is the perfect place where you'd be like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if he actually spanned more than one row? So where would we want that to happen? Basically, let's back him up over here and come back over to styles, and let's just have him span another row. You can see what happens. He's got this row, and now he's filled that up, and that pushes this picture over here. Interesting. Okay, let's move this over here then. So let's say he's featured here, and now we've got these four, but this is a bit of an outlier picture too, because it's one that's further back. So let me move that one down. And now, why don't we take this one, come back over here, and now we can span columns there. And now look what we've got. We got a big hero image, a little mosaic in the middle, and let's see, let me try a different aspect ratio to get him to look a little better. Let's try the tall one. That's not too bad. Yeah, portrait's okay. There we go. That's the one I was looking for. Classic 2x3. That gets us a good bit closer to filling in those gaps. Okay, cool. Now, how about we've just been moving some pictures around, and then we're setting the span settings over here if we want it to go over anything like this. So I also came up with, we wanted to take a look about what about if we want to include some text or something like that in here. So what we can do is, and actually we can even create this outside of the grid. Let's say I want to add the school logo and a little blurb about graduation. So let's do that. This will be a way of kind of enhancing it above. So I found the logo for the school. It's kind of big. And then below that, I'm going to actually borrow this from the original article. Oh, whoops, I hit the paywall. That's okay. I think I've got it copied up here. This is why I make these demos beforehand. Okay, so there's our copy from that. Oops. Okay, and then I want to create right after this guy, add after. I'm just going to put this in here as a piece of text. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and group these because I know I want, this is a place where groups are great because when you're using items in grids, I'll show you kind of how this works. Make a group out of this guy. And now this is a group. And so if we drag the group into the grid, it's treating the group as an entire entity. This is where groups are key. If the paragraph block that if the image and the paragraph block were not grouped, the text would just flow into another part of the grid as a separate item. So this is a very important spot where you want to use a grid, when you're using a grid and you want to keep items grouped together, this is absolutely where you would want to use a group. So what kind of fun does this let us do? So a group also has the spans. So if we do a column span, that's going to push this guy over here. It gives us kind of a tall slot over here. And let's see, if you start getting yourself into a corner, I just usually just pull these back. And let's see, he's spanning 2 still. And that's what these little blue outlines, you can see how it's spanning across the grid there. So let me bring him back down. There we go. Because we're already creating enough space here. So now this is a little big. Let's bring this down, bring that down. And then we can even basically just bring the size of this guy down. Let's make it square and maybe give it an actual, oops, there we go, and give it an actual size. This is an image within, so we can even give it an alignment. So centered here. So now what you've got is we've got this cool like hero image. We got a little blurb about the school itself. And then you've got these other things going on as well. All right. I meant to add the caption. Let me go back and add the caption to the hero image so you can see how that works as well. So in this case, you could add the caption right here using the caption, and that's fine. Or if we want to get a little wilder here, we could add a paragraph block after the picture, put that in there. And you see what I mean here, since these are not grouped together, we haven't actually associated the paragraph with the image yet. So if I select these and make them a group, now that since it's in a group now, I need to reset the span tag because it's in a group now, but that's okay. So the group is right here. Come back over, make this go back to 3. And now we have the paragraph tag, which you can do a bit more with, some styling and things like this if you want, and it changed colors and things like that. Oh, attributes, that's what here it is, appearance. I wanted to make these a little more medium like that. So you can get a little bit of definition there. Okay. And let's take a quick preview of this so you can see kind of what this is looking like in context. So remember, I'm working on the bottom one here. So this is the new one. So you see we've got a nice full width. We've got, could probably do a little bit of work here because in the preview, it wasn't quite clear how big this was going to be. But as you can see, we've got a little, we could float this in the middle if we wanted. And then we've got a few more pictures here. Actually, might be interesting to push that guy down there and have those there. But as you can see, there's tons of different fun ways that you can kind of go through this. If I actually, let me push him down again. So have him span that row. And then if we come back to his settings, maybe I can make him tall now. It's not super tall. And then the other thing I wanted to look at was the alignment here. So this group is a little funky. So what I'm going to do is wrap it in a cover. We haven't been talking about covers too much, but let's wrap it in a cover. And once again, anytime you wrap something in a new block, you're going to need to come back and reset the column stuff. So now we've got that. We can kind of minimize, the covers allow you to kind of minimize the amount of space it takes up. Also, I want to make sure everything, this is also the other reason you put things in a cover is because you can, let me bring this back down a little bit. So you can extend this out. This is the thing you can do with a cover is you can actually set a height to it or a height to it. And you see how things are, this guy here, you can change where things are being origin. So I'm hoping that doing it this way is going to center that a little bit better. Now I will bring this overlay down just a little bit. It's a little much. And looks like maybe we don't want to span him, but let's just see what it looks like in the preview. So what I'm doing is not necessarily trying to show you a finished layout, but just show you the kind of the processes that you can go through using the different span tools, using the groups, and using these all in combination. Yeah, here we go. So this is the new one that's got that. So I still wouldn't mind having this guy be a little bigger, and we could probably make that happen with a cover as well. But this is kind of fun. Let's actually try that one more. So instead of this him being, you saw how I could kind of change the height of the cover a little bit. Let's change this guy to a cover as well. Click on the image here, go to cover. And as you see already, he's kind of, I need to get rid of the overlay here. And instead, I'm going to just put a spacer block in here because it takes up space but doesn't show up in the preview. I can type here. There we go. So that actually, just by putting him in a cover like that, has forced the height. And then when you click on the cover, you get some really cool bits where you can kind of actually change the focal point. This is why a cover is really fun for some of this stuff. So we can do that. And now we've got these guys. So, however, if I did want to take this cover, because I was like, oh yeah, why don't we push it down another row? Let's try that. There you go. Check that out. Because it's a cover, it allows you to do this kind of zooming stuff and playing with the focal point and stuff like that. So I actually like that quite a bit. If we move it down, yeah, there's not enough top to bottom pixels, but we can do a little bit of left to right. So let's check that one out and see if this is kind of getting a little bit more where we were thinking of with keeping everything even and whatnot. Okay. Come down to the second one. So here's our hero image. Here's the background there. And yeah, look at the tightness of this grid now. So this is one grid from the top of this picture all the way to the bottom of these three. This is all just a grid. And if we wanted, we could assign like a full background color if we wanted this to really stand out and things like that. But yeah, this is the main power of grids combined with these dimension settings in a lot of these blocks. Find your block, you're good to go. Once again, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll be in touch. I'll get the recording out for you guys very soon.